get into the subject, starting probably in a couple of days, I'm going to make private all of the videos, pretty close to 400 of them, on YouTube. I have a reason for that. But what I will do is have 3, the one that we're actually doing today and 2 others that will stay public, so that if you missed just a couple of days ago or something, you can go back to them. And also, in regard to that, if you have something you really want to see, just email me and I will turn it back to public where you can see it. I don't want to take you guys away from it, but there are some other reasons to do that. Well, we're on number 3 of the 50, and we have a very kind of a special or a little bit difficult for me subject, but it comes from the book that I'm going to. I have actually sent out manuscripts now, and I'll mention this to you if you care. You know, I had some people that I had in mind, but if you would like to get a copy of the manuscript, all you have to do is email me, but I will send it to you electronically by email rather than a hard copy, unless for some reason you really want the hard copy. Then I'll do that for you too. I don't want to take away anything from you. Well, today we have a subject, as I mentioned, that is difficult for me because it'd be difficult for anybody, because a lot of it is very mystical and unexplainable. But I think that it is important to us as coaches to know, as we teach skills and teamwork and offenses and defenses, to be aware that there are some other possibilities of learning that we can't really explain. And I want to read to you a story from the book that will kind of explain where we're going and what I want to make very important to you. The story is from of the book Zen and the Art of Archery. A tremendous little book. It's a story of a German professor who went to Japan prior to World War II because he had a strong interest in Buddhism, but in particular Zen. And somehow he maneuvered to get a position at the University of Tokyo. I think it was University of Tokyo. And he went there with the idea that he would teach, but also that he would learn about Zen and other things in the Far East. They told him when he got there that the best way to learn about Zen was to do it through an activity, and they mentioned dance, they mentioned the tea ceremony, they mentioned painting, they mentioned martial arts, and they mentioned archery. He chose archery, even though he had never shot a bow and arrow. And they got him in with a master, a really top-notch master in this area, and who was a very conservative and traditional type of teacher. And I will tell you the story, and we'll take it from there. This is the professor. He said, "One day I asked the master, how can the shot be loosed if I do not do it?" All of this will clear up as we go along. He replied, "It shoots." And the professor said, "I've heard you say that several times before, so let me put it another way. How can I wait self-obliviously for the shot if I am no longer there?" He says, "It waits at the highest tension." It. And then the professor says, "And who or what is this it?" And the master replies, "Once you have understood that, you will have no further need of me. And if I tried to give you a clue at the cost of your own experience, I would be the worst of teachers and would deserve to be sacked. So let's stop talking about it and go on practicing." Well, sometime later in this story, another discussion occurred. This is the important part of the story that I'm reading to you, concerning aiming, which the master said was unimportant. Didn't believe in it. But you have to remember, the type of archery in Japan at that time and connected with Zen, the archer didn't sight down an arrow like this on a level. The back, where they released the string, was way up high like this. There was no real aiming possible. The master, long accustomed to my tiresome questions, shook his head. "I do not deny," he said after a short silence, "that there may be something in what you say. I do stand facing the goal in such a way that I am bound to see it, even if I do not intentionally turn my gaze in that direction. On the other hand, I know that this seeing is not enough. Decides nothing, explains nothing, for I see the goal as though I do not see it." "Then you ought to be able to hit it blindfolded," the professor jerked out. The master turned a glance to him which made him fear that he had insulted him, and then said, "Come to see me this evening." I seated myself opposite him on a cushion. He handed me tea, but did not speak a word. So we sat for a long time. There was no sound but the singing of the kettle on the hot coals. At last the master rose and made me a sign to follow him. The practice hall was brightly lit. The master told me to put a taper, long and thin as a knitting needle, in the sand in front of the target, but not switch on the light in the target stand. It was so dark that I could not even see its outlines, and if the tiny flame of the taper had not been there, I might perhaps have guessed the position of the target, though I could not have made it out with any precision. The master danced the ceremony. Keep that in mind. His first arrow shot out of the dazzling brightness into the deep night. I knew from the sound that it had hit the target. I knew from the sound that it had hit the target. The second arrow was a hit too. When I switched on the light in the target stand, I discovered, to my amazement, that the first arrow was lodged full in the middle of the black, which is the small circle in the middle, while the second arrow had splintered the butt of the first and plowed through the shaft before embedding itself beside it. I did not dare to pull the arrows out separately, but carried them back together with the target. The master surveyed them critically. "The first shot," he then said, "was no great feat, you will think, because after all these years I'm so familiar with my target stand that I must know, even in pitch darkness, where the target is. That may be, and I won't try to pretend otherwise. But the second arrow, which hit the first, what do you make of that? I, at any rate, know that it is not I who must be given the credit for this shot. It shot, and it made the hit. Let us bow to the goal. Well, that story could almost be out of a novel or a movie or something. It seems unreal. But I think there is, and I think in our days, science will be able to show us that there was more of a scientific reason for being able to do that than they could at the time of this story. But I think we have to remember that there are things that we can't explain and that go on not only at that time, but in our own lifetime and in our own sport. There just is something. They call it. Carl Jung, the great psychologist, spent a lifetime struggling with that word, it. And if you read anything about martial arts in the centuries ago, the word it is used a lot. It's an unexplainable thing that happens. But it happens here too. It's interesting to me that the four coaches that we put up as the masters of coaching, Vince Lombardi, Phil Jackson, John Wooden, and Dean Smith, all were very spiritual men. Now I'll leave it up to you to think if you would connect their success, their incredible success, to that one factor in any way. Well, there are incidents that we know about. For example, Michael Jordan making the shot in the NCAA tournament. The shot itself was not that outstanding. It actually was only about a 12-foot shot, and he was wide open. But if you watch that film carefully, you will see it was almost like the sky opened up for him. People just were nowhere around, and he was given that shot. But here's the interesting thing about that. Jordan tells the story that he had that dream of doing that for years before he made the shot, just like it happened. And even on the bus going to the game, that dream came back to him. Now, I don't know Michael Jordan other than to say hello to, but the description of it reminded me also of another case. Keith Smart hit the last shot of the game as the clock was running out to give Indiana the NCAA championship. I was at the game. I saw that. I saw the shot. But I worked with Keith for some time. And one day in the office, he told me the story about that shot. Keith had a real bad bicycle accident when he was young, and he was hospitalized for a long time. And when he wasn't in the hospital, he had to stay in bed in his home. He began dreaming of doing something remarkable, and that something was making a shot to win an NCAA championship. It kept coming back to him and coming back to him and coming back to him. Now, he told me the story, so I know Keith was not telling me something that was untrue. And he too had the dream on the way to the game. The exact shot, he told me, the exact place on the floor. And he made the shot to win the championship. Well, you can say that was coincidence or luck or whatever it is, but I'm not that sure that it is. I think there is more to it. Kobe, 81 points, for example. After he said he didn't even know what was happening. His hands and his body were just kind of moving on their own. But 81 points in a game, in an NBA game, you have to wonder that is a feat that just has to have some type of help. Tarkanian says this of John Wooden, one of our four masters. He says in an interview, it's in the book, Seth Davis's book, Wooden, so many strange things would happen. I think that Wooden was such a nice man who went to church all the time that the good Lord wanted him to win. Did he really believe that, he was asked. Yes, I do. I don't think he was lucky. I think the good Lord just said, this is a good man. John Wooden's teams won 80-some games in a row, plus 10 out of 12 NCAA championships. I had an evening with him, and I made a video for it. You can go to it. It's called Night with Wooden, or A Night with Wooden. And he tells me a story that absolutely shocked me about his own career and what he thought happened to turn from a good coach, but an unknown, to winning 10 out of 12 championships and setting an incredible record doing it. Well, you can say what you want, and you have to make up your own mind. Is there a link between a John Wooden and a change that came about in his life, which he describes to me, and then the tremendous success he had afterwards? Could be just a happenstance, but also it could be in that area of the unknown. It could be in the area of the it. And I think as coaches, we have to understand that these things can happen. And everything I've seen and heard, you can go to any history book, and there's things happening all through history that are just unexplainable. They may have happened to you. I know they have happened to me. That I can have no way of understanding what good things came to me that I had no premonition of. They just were there. You probably had the same feelings. But one thing that comes across, all the things I'm talking about and more, were the result also of in very serious practice and a strong desire to make it happen. If you can follow that and put it into your own life and into your own coaching and teach your players this, you don't have to ask for anything. Good things will just happen to you. And I believe that with all my heart, and I hope that you can feel the same way. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.